2026 is here. Can you believe it? We live in the future, and part of that future is Tesla, the world's leading embodied AI company and part of the Max 7. And as you all know on this channel, we are covering the most exciting AI stocks. We are trading these stocks and investing and take a strategic view on what is going to happen and try to predict the future. And so far it works pretty well over the last 2 years. Tesla is one of the central foci of that channel here. And we are going to ask the question today, since we just had New Year's Eve 2025, how many Tesla shares make you a millionaire by New Year's Eve of 2027? In other words, in 24 months, how many Tesla shares do you need if our projections become true in order to have more than $1 million in Tesla shares? And this is going to be an exciting exercise here. We're going to use the model. We're going to look at the financials. We are going to look at Robotaxi and Optimus projected sales, projected by us here at Pioneer Lands, using all the inputs we can get our hands on and being realistic with a base case and see what that number actually is. Before we go into it, you probably know all about the Tesla story. Tesla is a car company, or used to be a car company, transitioned into cars and energy, at least when it comes to the actual revenue streams right now. But for over 10 years has also been a leader in self-driving car technology. And instead of making shortcuts and trying to scramble together something like Waymo, for example, did, Tesla decided they want to go for the real transformative technology stack. They want to have end-to-end neural net solutions. They want to train the cars on massive amounts of data. They have an enormous data advantage over everyone else because they have 8.5 million cars on the road that all collect data. And we have seen now in 2025, last year, that there was tremendous breakthroughs on the robotaxi technology. They have been deploying these robotaxis in Austin, then in California, then in Phoenix, Arizona, in Florida it starts, and now they're doing this all over the place, even in Europe, in Australia, in Korea. So they're seeding their technology everywhere, and now they even removed the first safety drivers, so the cars are fully autonomous. Now, why is this so exciting? This is the first part of the Tesla story. It's so exciting because robotaxi has enormous potential once you solve this autonomous driving problem. You can make trillions and trillions of dollars in margin, not even revenue, if you can provide the world with a fully autonomous transport infrastructure with hundreds of millions of cars and trucks. And once you crack the magic code of having true full self-driving, something no other company is even remotely close to, truly conscious cars that understand the world around them and then become self-driving, you can deploy hundreds of millions of these cars. In fact, you have to deploy hundreds of millions of these cars because it's a disruptive change in transportation efficiency. People don't need cars anymore. You don't need public transport anymore. You don't need trucks anymore. Everything can be switched on Tesla infrastructure. So this is a ridiculous market size. And the exciting thing is that we have seen in 2025, if you know anything about the technology and follow the exact things that are happening, we have seen that Tesla is actually this close to cracking the code. And I project it's going to happen in April of this year. So that is one half of the story. The other half of the story, of course, is Optimus, the Tesla robot that gets a lot of attention, and there is a lot of debate in the humanoid robot community if Tesla truly has the lead in robots, or if there are other competitors. And different from robotaxi, there is a little bit more competition, but it's also an enormously complex endeavor. And this is why we are very excited about Tesla. I show you some pictures here. You will probably have seen that thing. This is Optimus version 2, and version 3 will look very similar. And they're coming also this year. I project this year actually thousands, potentially tens of thousands. Doesn't really matter. Thousands or tens of thousands of Optimus robots roaming around, being fully autonomous. This is still early, so it's going to take a few more years before it truly scales, different from robotaxi. And these are the two big opportunities. I just wanted to frame that for you guys so we understand what we are actually talking about when we look at the model. So let's jump to the model and try to understand what's happening. So we have a very complex financial model here. You see some numbers. I'm not going to go through everything, but we have all the relevant inputs. I modeled this all out, including risk factors, but also all the cash flows and everything else. I want to focus on this specific chart here, where you see my projections of the fleet sizes of Robotaxi, but also the fleet size of Optimus. So let me explain first. What do I mean with fleet size? What is even the business model here? And in both instances, the interesting thing is that this will not be about selling things anymore. These are transportation as a service, TaaS, transportation as a service, and RaaS, robots as a service, where Tesla will retain ownership of the CapEx, of the capital assets, like all the robotaxis, hundreds of millions of them, as well as Optimus robots as a fleet. And that means they can charge by mile, by usage. There will be leasing models where you can own your own robotaxi that drives you around or share it with people. I think we unlock a huge amount of new business models that are already prototyped by Tesla. For example, they have a lease program, they have a rental car program now in San Diego. So they are experimenting, because what's going to happen with these cars is, now that you have a seamless millions and millions of these cars very soon, autonomously driving, and you can just book them. You can reserve probably shares of cars like that to have a dedicated robotaxi for yourself, or you can just do it as a rideshare. On the robot side, it's very likely that these robots also will be leased out. Maybe you can buy them for 20, 30, 40,000, but regardless if you buy them or not, Tesla will charge you by usage. They will charge you monthly. For example, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 per Optimus per month. I bet on 1,000 in this model, so very cheap. Very competitive, because you're competing directly with human labor. Imagine you can hire an employee and you pay him $12,000 a year, and this employee is never sick, works all day and all night, doesn't make mistakes, and gets tremendously smarter with every week that goes by, because it's a hive mind. We have millions of these Optimus robots. They all learn, and whatever each one learns, all of them learn. It's going to be very scary, but it's also going to be mind-bogglingly effective. Now, what this model here does, it tells you the fleet size in 1,000 units. So, for example, 1 means 1,000, right? 26 means 26,000, and we will go into that. Now, the point is, in both instances, why the market and forward-looking investors are so excited about Tesla is because these solutions, both of them, Optimus and Robotaxi, the two giant future verticals of Tesla as a company, they are effectively uncapped opportunities. Autonomous transport infrastructure across the world to replace close to 2 billion cars right now that are active, including buses and everything. 2 billion. That's the install base of cars. Every single one of these cars, or at least half of them in the developed world, is too expensive compared with Robotaxi. Robotaxi can disrupt everything. It can also disrupt commercial trucking, which is an enormous, enormous business. So that's the first big thing. And Optimus is, of course, even larger. It can replace human labor across the board. And once you do something like that, once you drop labor costs in Germany, in Sweden, not in North Korea, in South Korea, maybe in North Korea too, not that profitable, but in South Korea, in Japan, in all these highly developed industries and countries with very high labor costs. And you can now introduce these robots for 12,000 instead of like 70, 80,000 costs for a German, expert worker, for example, in a factory. Now you can replace it and dramatically lower costs. And once you dramatically lower costs, you're not just going to cut costs, you're going to hire way more workers. That's a well-known paradigm in economics, because you can grow your margins, you can produce more stuff, you can drop the prices and increase your profits. It's disruptive. If you go from 80,000, 100,000 a year to 12, 15,000 a year and have better workers, where's the end? The sky is the limit. We are talking about tens of billions of these robots that will be needed. We are also talking all households, hospitals, agriculture, mining, everything you can imagine. Of course, also military, that's a whole different topic. I think Tesla will stay out of that, at least with the Tesla brand. But the sky is the limit. And of course, the question is that everyone is asking, with Robotaxi, does it work? Can you have true autonomy? Can you have truly autonomous cars driving around? That is exactly where the market disagrees. Where there's one side of the equation, which is me and some other Tesla tubers and some smart analysts like Dan Ives, Adam Jonas of Morgan Stanley, right? Adam understands it, Dan understands it, I understand it, Søren Basher understands it, Herbert, the cyber bulls understand it. We know, because we are observing the technology on the ground. You know, Wedbush, Dan Ives, and Morgan Stanley, they have sent people to the robotaxis and drove in them. Of course, we all have done that too and observed that we know this is working and we know the time has come. We know 2026 is the inflection point. And we also understand once you hit the true inflection point where this stuff truly works, you can scale this straight into hundreds of millions. That is how I see the future by 2040. And that is the foundational assumption here on these sales numbers. And Optimus is a little delayed because it takes some time. Optimus is the red fleet installment base, but then overtakes robotaxis very quickly because the inflection point for for Optimus will be a little more delayed. It's not this year. It's probably 2030, in my opinion. But you can deploy 2 million, as you see. The fleet of Optimus by 2030 is 2 million, in my opinion, because you can easily sell 2 million of these things without them being perfect, with them still breaking down, with them still needing 10,000, maybe even 20,000 in maintenance per year. Let's say 10,000. No problem on top of these RAS models, right? But once you hit the inflection point around 2031, in my projection, 2032, 31, where the robots truly become mass producible, perfectly working, human replacements, worker replacements, you can scale this into the billions, and you can do so with no resistance. And that's what we really have to understand. You can scale Optimus humanoid robots once they exist into the billions with no interruption. You can go exponential until you hit tens of billions of these things. And that everyone agrees with that, by the way. There is no one who disagrees with me on that. There are only people who disagree on the timing. They say 2031 is not realistic. But then you push back and ask them, okay, what is realistic? 2040? Do you really think by 2040 there's anything we can't do with AGI and everything coming in the 2020s? So I think they're just wrong. They didn't think this through. And so let's look at the numbers. I believe 2026 is, in fact, the year of breakthrough robotaxi scaling. And if you look at that, I assume 40,000 robotaxis deployed. That's a little bullish, I understand, but I do think it's the base case. I think it's more likely than not. Based on all kinds of assumptions, you can watch other videos on that where I'm going into robotaxi, into cybercab, CapEx production, into the manufacturing lines that are being prepared that give us clear indications that Tesla is betting billions of dollars on these things scaling this year. Because they have mass manufacturing of the cybercab, which is useless without the robotaxi technology, and they have to basically ramp it up yet now, which means they have high confidence. So 40,000 robotaxis, going to 240,000 by 2027, going to 740,000. This is the install base, by the way. So it's additive, it's not the sales. And hitting 2 million by 2029. You heard that right? I'm saying 2 million by 2029, and then going exponential, of course. If you go down here and see my assumptions, you see that we are basically flatlining around 29 million per year newly produced robotaxis. That's actually the peak. And with that, Tesla can saturate it. They are not going to scale beyond 30 million per year. So that is as big as Toyota and Volkswagen combined, roughly. Complicated math, but they have 20 million units. That would be 30 million units. All the other car sales of Tesla would be marginal at this point. So Tesla would be around 30 million units per year for a bunch of years. To ramp up this install base, and then you get to 200, 300, 400 million over time. This is actually, it's conservative. That aims at below 200 million by 2040. You could also argue they would saturate the entire world faster. But let's see, you need roughly 10 gigafactories for that, maybe advanced gigafactories. You probably only need, less than that. You probably need only 7 optimized gigafactories for that, and Tesla already has 3.5. So this is all not very complicated to get to that number. It's all about demand. Can you deploy these things? And the important thing is I'm focusing on robotaxi here. Why do I believe that will impact the stock price dramatically in 2026 and 2027? You would argue, well, this is not very big. And if you go to free cash flow, for example, free cash flow effects of this, here's free cash flow, 2024. See Tesla total 6.3 billion, 2024 goes down to 2.26 billion, roughly, who knows. And 2026, I'm projecting 4.27, and then in 2027, 11 billion in free cash flow. And you could argue, Joe, what are you talking about? Look how tiny that still is. Robotaxi adds 2 billion in free cash flow and Optimus adds 1.5 billion. Well, you have to understand, analysts are not that dumb. If you actually achieve that, what I'm outlining here, you see here is already a differential of roughly $400 to $500 million through these two new business lines this year that I'm projecting. But we are talking about an exponential ramp, right? And if you go like that, if you go up like that from 500 million to 3.8 billion in free cash flow contributed by these two new things, these two new verticals, every analyst in the world is going to fully understand what's happening next. So the stock market is always forward looking. The reason Tesla is under pressure right now in Q1, right, is because people say, oh, now it's time to show me the goods. But showing me the goods does not mean this year. It doesn't mean you need 53 billion in free cash flow. It means exactly what's happening in these 2 years. It means going from 0 to 500 million to 3.8 billion, right? From 500 million to 3.8 billion in revenue in 1 year. Massive growth and overtaking the core business, easily overtaking it. 15 billion contribution versus 11 billion by 2028. Wall Street is not that dumb. Once this is proven, which will be in 2026 and Optimus in 2028 and 27, that will impact the price a lot. And so that is the basic assumption. You can also see here for fun how many new units are being deployed to get to that fleet size, 40,000, 25,000, and then 200,000 robotaxis and 100,000 Optimus, whatever the plural is. No one knows what declination that is. And that's kind of the assumption. So now you know what this whole model is based on. So everything I'm going to say from now on, I have a very high confidence in the stock price projections that I'm going to show you if these assumptions are true. So if these numbers come into play, if we actually have 40,000 robotaxis deployed in 2026 and then 200,000 in 2027, I have a high confidence that my share price skews conservative. I'm very, very high confidence. What is my confidence that these numbers are true? The sales numbers? Well, lower than the other confidence. But I still think it's more likely than not. It's like above 50%, right? It's above 50% that they happen. They could be better, the numbers, and less than 50% chance they're worse. That's how I see it. And if you take these numbers now and go to the return simulation, I prepared a little return simulation here. Scroll all the way down. So here you see I'm simulating. And we are looking at that number, 2027. That's what we are asking tonight. How much money, how many shares do you need to get to your $1 million in 2027? And I put in 2,000 shares, right? Because you saw it on thumbnail. I'm asking 2,000, 1,100, or 580. So if you have 2,000 shares, you would end up at 3.49 million. The stock price assumption, by the way, is up here. So my target stock price by the end of 2027 is $1,745 per share. So we are currently around 470. And I believe the stock is going to go up to 1,000 in 2026, end of 2026, and then another $700 here. And then it actually goes up steeper. So this is I think it's a pretty reasonable price target based on my assumptions, actually conservative. And now we can test our very simple assumptions. What about 1,100? Type it in, boom, and you see what happens. You have $1.9 million. That's way more than you need. You only want to be a millionaire. So 1,100 shares. Too much. You don't need 1,100 shares. So let's test the last number. What if you would have 580 Tesla shares today, the beginning of January 2026? How much does this give you? You guessed it, $1,012,000. So with the amazingly low number of 580 shares, you're getting to over $1 million. Within 24 months, 2027, you're sitting there, New Year's Eve, say, congratulations, I'm a Tesla-naire. I'm a Tesla stock millionaire. And now we can also ask the question, okay, how much money do you need for $580 today? This is end of 2020. Well, this is the only way I could do this. So it's basically beginning of 2026, $1,000, roughly. $70,000, right? This is what you need if my assumptions are true on the business side. That's $68,000 in 2026 or end of the last day of 2025. would get you to an amazing $1,012,000 by 2027. That is very rapid growth. And then, of course, you get very lucky in the future. I don't have to discuss that. That's a different video to go into the different simulations for the different years. But that gives you a little bit of a hint. So it's always good to have motivations in your mind. It's very important that this is conditional on these assumptions. That's how you have to observe all the Tesla talk or other stock talk. You have to have your model ready. You have to understand these assumptions, because only then can you be happy and actually make sure these things are reasonably intelligent. And that is kind of the assumption. If you agree that we could have 240,000 robotaxis the next 24 months deployed, and also 126,000 Optimus, which is much less important, by the way, if that number is lower. It's about the robotaxis. Then I think you are looking at a realistic assessment here. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you have a wonderful start into the new year. You remember these numbers, 580 shares. If these things come true, make you $1 million or make you a millionaire within 24 months. New Year's Eve 2027, you will be very happy. I hope that was interesting. Follow us on pioneerlands.org. If you want to see how I perform, by the way, go to pioneeralpha.org. That's where I'm sharing my actual portfolio results in benchmarking them against all kinds of other things. It's in real time, so that's very interesting. There you can see how right or wrong I am. I was very right in 2025. Massive alpha over Tesla stock. So let's see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed that, and see you tomorrow.